Machi Koro, a Japanese game that I played for the first time last year, released the English version, but they kept the Japanese title. Incidentally, Machi Koro in Japanese means I've eaten too much white bread right before going to bed, and now I can't sleep. I'm not feeling too good. I'm pretty sure that's what it means. Either way, Machi Koro is a simple card game with dice. You have those two elements there in which you buy resources, you roll dice, you get more resources. It's simple, linear, fun, easy to teach. More than a filler, a little more complex than a filler, but considerably more rewarding than most fillers. So Machi Koro came out last year, at least that's when I played it, and now recently they released an expansion, the Harbor expansion, which is not this one, is not this box that I'm showing you at all, because I don't have the box of the expansion anymore. Like it happens with many expansions, the box was returned to the big wheel of life and reincarnation and recycling, and the components of the expansion went into the original box. And the components are simply new cards, some new cards that you add to the initial sets that you hand to the players, new cards to represent businesses that players can acquire during gameplay, and also some extra cards to allow for a fifth player to play the game. Also, you get a rule book that describes the use of the new cards, and most importantly, a new rule that changes gameplay entirely. Let me show you the components and let me tell about this rule, because it really turns Machi Koro into something else. In the new version of Machi Koro with the expansion, your initial set of cards is larger than before. You have your two starting places, but you also have a pre-built establishment. It is already face up at the beginning of the game, and what it does is that immediately before buying establishments, if you have 0 coins, you get a coin from the bank, so that is nice. You also have the old major establishments that you're trying to build to win the game, but you have 2 new ones which you also need to build to win the game. So now to win the game you need to turn face up 6 such cards instead of 4, which may add a little bit of length to the game, especially early on when you do not know the rules very well. These new establishments are, well, this one is actually pretty easy to flip face up because it's pretty cheap. And what it does is, if the dice total is 10 or more, you may add 2 to the total on your turn only. As you begin the game, this doesn't seem to be all that useful, but then later in the game there are some cards that have higher values, and you want those numbers to hit as often as possible, so actually the possibility, the option of adding 2 to your total is pretty sweet. The airport, super expensive, look at it. If you know the game, let that piece of information sink in for a minute. That's pretty tough, but it is also scary, because if you build nothing on your turn, you get 10 coins from the bank. It is likely that the airport will be the last card that they will flip in the game if for whatever reason you manage to actually build it earlier. Then from that moment on it is a countdown, because you just gain so much money, you can build so much stuff. It is pretty tough for the opponent to catch up if you had the airport ready and working and they do not. Now, as for the area of the game where you play, and that is where you purchase cards, where is it? Where are the nice little stacks of cards that you can choose from that you had in the basic game? Gone is that. All of the cards of the base game and of the expansion are shuffled together in a single monster deck. Then at the beginning of the game you need to set up the area, which you do randomly. You simply start drawing cards, and each card that comes out of the deck that does not have a specimen in play already goes in its own discard pile, goes in its own pile, is what I mean. So here I'm drawing cards, I'm not getting any doubles, and look at this, I drew 10 cards and they're all unique. Suppose that I had drawn doubles, so for example that I had drawn an extra wheat field, then it would have gone on top of the other cards. The same would have applied here. So at the beginning of the game you're simply establishing 10 different draw piles, and some may have a single card, some may have multiple cards, but usually not many cards, 2, 3 tops. What happens here is that there will always be 10 available locations for you to purchase during the game, but the available ones will change throughout the game. Because when you purchase a card, if at that point you open a slot and there is nothing there, then you immediately draw a card from the deck to replace it. And if it's a card that doesn't have another copy around, then you use that to fill that slot. Otherwise, you simply put it on one of the existing piles, on the matching card of the existing pile, and you continue drawing until you have 10 that are different from one another. Bakery, I don't have a bakery, but publisher, I don't. The publisher, it will go here. Then the food warehouse, I don't have that. I put it there. This is the biggest change in the game. It is pretty huge of a change, really, because now you cannot plan too much in advance. Well, you can have some ideas of what you want to do, but you cannot have just an algorithm in your mind and implement that every time, because the available cards will change from game to game and in dramatic ways throughout the same game. As for new cards that are available, we have the Flower Shop that is new of this expansion. You get a coin from the bank for each flower orchard that you own, but on your turn only, but triggered with a 6, so good because you can trigger with 1 or 2 dice. We have the tax office. Let's look for it. Where is a tax office when you need one? Take half, rounded down, of the coins from each player who has 10 coins or more on your turn only. Because of this card and maybe in play, it can be tough to save up a lot of money, but if you manage to do so, then it pays off, of course, but that's a risky thing. You will be tempted to spend all of your money quickly before the tax office takes it all, or you can choose to save up, even though it may be a little dangerous. Another card that you have here, which is a new thing, is the Tuna Boat, which has a very high number to trigger, but remember, luckily enough, you have the Harbor that allows you to add 2 to a high roll. So if you have 12 or 13, but with the Arbor that means 10, really, 10 or more. With the power of the Arbor, you'll be able to trigger this card. When you trigger this card on anyone's turn, the current player rolls 2 dice. If you have a Harbor, you get as many coins as the dice total. You roll the dice, you collect the corresponding amount of money, which is pretty sweet. Wow, this expansion that you do not see here, what I'm doing right now is completely misleading, because this is not the expansion. Well, it's in here, but you're not seeing it. This expansion that you do not see is really necessary. I think that if you play Machi Koro, if you like Machi Koro, you need this one. Because it changes gameplay entirely. I guess you could use the rule with the old cards, but I do not know that you would have enough cards to shuffle them and then to draw them out and to make it interesting, to have random drawing, to create random decks to purchase from. I think more or less you will still find yourself having the same decks available. But with the new cards, then you have enough types of cards that indeed it is interesting to see which cards are available and which ones aren't at any given time during gameplay. This may add a little bit of extra randomness, because maybe there's a player that managed to acquire the single available copy of one awesome card, and that player is stealing, collecting money from everybody, and other people cannot get back at that player because corresponding cards or cards that will work with that one are not available yet. But that is not bound to last forever. Then you start buying cheap cards to make the deck move, to get cards unstuck. New cards become available and things do tend to balance themselves out. So on one hand you have that extra luck factor, which frankly doesn't bother me because it may affect everybody equally, and there are ways of dealing with that. You may have alternative strategies that still make it interesting for you, even if somebody else got that wonderful card and you do not have it. And also, I really much like the fact that the game feels much more tactical. You have to react to what the players do, of course, but also to what is available on the table at any given time. You may have a long-term plan, but right now a card has become available and you know it may not be there forever. You cannot do too much planning ahead. The game is not so much of multiplayer solo, which original game at times may have looked like. It kind of could give you that feeling, but here you have an interaction, which is of course much more interesting, even though it is still many times indirect, because it is about purchasing cards at the right time, at the right moment, denying powerful combos to the opponents as you're trying to build your own. To me, this new rule of the 10 decks of cards that change throughout the game is necessary. I can't imagine playing the original Machi Koro. Also, I heard online that some people had figured out strategies and then the game felt completely flat to them because they could just implement the same strategy over and over again. Well, you cannot do it here because you may have a wonderful strategy in mind and the cards to implement the strategy are simply not available there. The new cards make the game a little longer, and I'm talking about the establishments that you need to purchase to complete the game, to win the game. But it is mainly a matter of learning about the new cards and learning about the new effects. I played a 5-player game with the new expansion, with players that had not played the game before. I was teaching to everybody else. That really took a long time. That really took longer than desirable. But everybody was also learning the game. And you have 5 players, which is an option that you have, which can be great. But I guess there's a warning here: do not play the 5-player game with all of the establishments unless you're playing with players that are very familiar with the game. So maybe start small with 6 establishments to build to win the game. Then you add players or larger number of players, and I guess there is no rule in the universe that prevents you from using less establishments to make the game a little shorter. So there are ways of going around that if you encounter the problem of the game feeling too long soon after you learn it, soon after you start playing it in the new version. But I don't think that that's going to be a problem in the long run, because then when players are familiar with the effects connect very well with one another. The effects feel familiar, feel organic and fluid. You still have the fun challenge that you had in the original game of choosing when to switch from the 1-die strategy to the 2-die strategy. All the good stuff of the original game, plus many more interesting tactical situations at the only potential and I believe temporary cost of longer gameplay. So overall, Machi Koro the Harbor is a really good expansion, one that once you try it you can't go back if you have played and enjoyed Machi Koro in the past. Highly recommend it. If you haven't played original Machi Koro, well, give it a try, because I also liked it originally. I see how if you play the original game without the expansion, it may become repetitive and dry after a while, but I believe that the expansion really is going to give it a lot of longevity.